Thank you for coming tonight. I'm Dawn Noto. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Design Center. This is our speaker discussion about how food shapes our city. It's our 2025 lecture series, and it's the last topic of our series. So we're really excited to have you here tonight. Following this in June will be our luncheon, and our luncheon theme is Shaping Our Best City. We will have topics about the High Falls State Park and the Interloop North project, along with Rock the Riverway. We will talk about how those projects will shape our city for years to come. I want to thank our board of directors. We are definitely represented by a great board. Miriam is here tonight. Bill Price couldn't be here tonight. He's on vacation in Yellowstone, so we gave him an excuse, a pass. But the board really supports our mission and gets us through some tough times over recently, but we are there and we are happy to be moving forward in 2025 with a new designed logo and a new panel discussion that we're bringing to Rochester with local panel experts to talk about these topics. Our staff is here tonight. Sophie Redmond was at the entrance table, and we can't do the work that we do without talented staff and interns that come through our doors. We do have interns from different colleges, U of R, Mary Smith College in Boston, we're getting a student this summer. So we're excited to share Rochester with them and them sharing their ideas and their future with us. So we're fortunate we provide this series at no cost. There's no charge to admit, and that's only because of our sponsors. We have several sponsors tonight. ESL has been our visionary sponsor for the whole series. We're happy that we have this partnership. ESL does a lot to shape our community. DeMarco Group is tonight's food topics sponsor. And then we also have community sponsors. You'll see their names. I'm not going to read them all tonight. But we know these people. In fact, most of them are here right now at AIA. They're having an awards ceremony right next door. So if you didn't find parking, it's probably because of one of these people here, which is really great. Thanks, Philomena. So our sponsors really support the community. They shape our community every day. They are working to design buildings, design interiors and lighting. So we're really grateful for their partnership with the Community Design Rochester. Some of our urban sponsors this year, you'll recognize their names. They've done a lot of great projects in Rochester, and they continue to shape our city. Our neighborhood sponsors, again, different levels of sponsorship allow us to bring this to you at no cost and helps us provide for the luncheon as well in June. And we can't do it either without our private donors. Nonprofits really rely on the support of the community, and we're fortunate enough to have a great community in front of us. And one more sponsor. The New York State sponsors, the Council of the Arts, or On the Arts, sponsors a lot of nonprofits, and they've sponsored the Community Design Center for years. We're grateful for their support always. The funds always are a challenge. We've been reading about things like that in the newspaper lately, so we'll continue to apply for their support. I hope everybody got a raffle ticket for tonight. Tonight we are raffling off with Memorial Art Gallery a free membership for a year to the art gallery. It's a family and grandparent membership. So please keep your raffle ticket, and right at the end of the discussion, we'll do the raffle. Tonight we're going to talk about how food shapes our city. And when we decided on this topic, we really wanted to look through the lens of maybe, local food suppliers, local food restaurants, local grocery stores. But when it comes down to it, the public market has really shaped our city for 120 years. On June 1st, it'll celebrate its 120 years at the current location off of Union Street. So that's an amazing feat for our market. I was thinking that might be the oldest retail establishment in Rochester at the same location. We might have another competition with Palmer's Food, I heard. So we'll have to do the research on that. And they probably moved a couple times. So that's a really good feat. But tonight we're going to look a little bit beyond the market, and I have to put my glasses on, and think about the systems behind them, because food moves from production to processing, to delivery, and then ultimately to our tables. So this journey often starts on a nearby farm or urban garden within the city, and processing adds value and creates jobs. We know we have orchard apple orchards everywhere, and we get local cider at them. So those are pressed somewhere. In my neighborhood, we have Karma sauce. I don't know if anybody eats Karma sauce or likes Karma sauce, but they're made from locally homegrown peppers. So from farm to production, right in our community. The distribution of that, whether it's direct at the market or through a CSA box or maybe your grocery store, how efficient are these systems and how equitable are they? That's what we'll be delving into tonight. The public market really embodies all of those stages. It's a hub for producers and it's an entrepreneurs. It's a delivery point and a vital, accessible space for all Rochesterians. It represents what a healthy, equitable urban food system can be and is. As planners and community members, we must ask, how can we grow more food locally? How can we expand local processing, improve access to healthy food across all neighborhoods? These aren't just food questions, they're really questions about health and equity and our city's future. So we're going to use the market tonight as a lens on how to explore food systems and how they shape Rochester and how we shape them in return. So I'm really excited to introduce our guests tonight because they're the experts on food. I mean, we all eat, I'm going back. We're all experts. But tonight I have Philomena. I'm starting out with Philomena. Philomena, I've known for many years. She has a casual outpost at the Rochester Public Market serving healthy vegetarian and vegan and gluten-free options. She has breakfast and lunch there. She has been in operation since 2013, first at 540 West Main Street, and now she's at the Public Market in Shed B31 and Stall 33. People mean everything to her. She's learned from her parents that her most precious treasure are people, without which nothing can prosper, and she truly believes in them. She has learned to appreciate the good people in her life and never take anyone who comes from, sorry about that. She never takes anyone who comes positively her way for granted. Having traveled from very far away from her original family, food has become the only channel to connect to new families here in Rochester. Quoting Philomena, "I love to cook, so cooking and bringing laughter and joy to people's faces connects me to a family of origin, as it's our African culture and tradition to serve food in welcoming and receiving guests." So welcome, Philomena. Thank you for joining us today. Next to Philomena is Jim Farr. Many people recognize Jim Farr from the Public Market or all around our city on our streets. He's responsible for the day-to-day operations and oversight of the Public Market and the International Plaza on South Clinton Avenue. Or north, yes, no, you're right, that way. He's including the marketing, the planning, collaborations, contracts, and compliance issues. He develops and implements special events and initiatives at the Market Plaza and in the adjoining districts. He's the longtime director. He's been there for 48 years, or with Rochester for 48 years. 30 at the Market. He's just played a pivotal role in Rochester's food scene. He knows it in and out. He just recently was presented a proclamation by Mayor Evans, and well-deserved, Jim. So thank you for transforming the Public Market into a vibrant cultural destination, because launching events like the Bands on the Brick, Jim's visionary leadership has left a lasting legacy, and he's now helping shape the future of the International Plaza. So we really appreciate the work you've done. Recently, the market was open for 8 days in a row, right? And what a feat that is, and thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Welcome, Jim. Next, I'll pick on Mitch Gruber. Mitch is a longtime friend and a former neighbor of mine. Mitch was born and raised in Rochester. He holds a BS from Binghamton University and a PhD in history from the University of Rochester. He studied the history of food retail in urban America. His dissertation was The Degradation of the Food Retail Landscape, examining the history of the Rochester Public Market and the food retail trade in the city. Mitch is a Chief Impact Officer at FoodLink, the regional food bank. And at FoodLink, Mitch helps develop some of our most effective health programs and anti-poverty programs in the region, including the Curbside Market, Lexington Ave Urban Farm, and a culinary fellowship, career fellowship. And that's at the library, right, downtown. Okay, nice. Mitch has been on Rochester City Council since 2018. Him and his wife moved from my neighborhood to Cornhill with their two lovely boys. And, but we still see them all the time. Welcome, Mitch. And last but not least, definitely coming all the way from Syracuse is Professor Matt Pottinger. Matt holds a Bachelor of Science from Pennsylvania State University and a Master of Landscape Architecture from the University of California, Berkeley. He's been a professor of landscape architecture at SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry since 1984, where his teaching, research, and community engagement focuses on understanding the vital cultural practices that shape landscapes. For over 2 decades, he's led studios and community-based projects and conducted internal research on the interrelationships of food and landscape, the role of design in creating sustainable and socially just food systems. Professor Pottinger's teaching, research, and community engagement centers on the vital cultural practices. I said that, didn't I? Sorry. This work includes the creation of Syracuse Grows, an urban agriculture advocacy group, a peri-urban farm with New American Refugees, and the first regional food system plan for Central New York, Food Plan CNY. He's the co-author of a book with Jamie Puritan of Landscape Narratives, Design Practices for Telling Stories, which received a merit award from the American Society of Landscape Architects. So welcome, Matt. We're really excited to have you join our conversation. Now, on to our discussion. I just kind of wanted to start with maybe a local context, like how does food get to the public market? What is the background, if maybe we could speak a little bit about the farmers and the work that they have to do to prepare and get ready to provide us with a Saturday experience that we all get to share?
You want me to start,
Sure.
Don? Well, I mean, the public market is more than just farmers, and that's one of the things that distinguishes it and makes it special in a lot of ways. Before there were grocery stores in Rochester, or major grocery stores with their own distribution system, the public market was the main source of food for a 5-county area, and it was mostly street carts and small corner stores and others that would come to the market to get their produce and other products. So although it was primarily in the early days, mostly local farmers, and a lot of them from the town of Irondequoit, actually. There used to be a whole shed that was just Irondequoit farmers at the market. It's always had other products that were shipped in from across the country to supply, keep the food and fresh vegetables and fruits year-round at the market. But so today we still have that mix of vendors, but we always focus on the farmers, and we're probably about 45 to 50% farmers, especially in season as we come into the growing season now, and just finally had asparagus last week, which was late because of the weather and all the wetness and everything else. But their typical day, we start on Saturdays. The market opens officially at 5 o'clock. And some of those vendors, they have to pack on Fridays, and they're growing, picking, packing, getting ready to come there. They come, some of them driving as far as 2 hours, and then start setting up at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning to open at 5, and then spend their day there till 3 in the afternoon. And then anything that's left, they need to pack up and go back to the farm. And by the time they've done it, they've been up 24 hours just about. So it's really it's a great place for them to sell, and it's a great place for them to actually show their products. But it's not an easy life, and I think we're always looking for new farmers and trying to recruit farmers, but the folks that want to put in those hours and do that luckily we have some families that have been there 4 or 5 generations, and so they're some over 100 years, so it's great to have them there. But it's a struggle, and it's not easy, the job they have.
Not at all.
And Don, I'll add that I think to Jim's point about the market not just being farmers, one thing that's been really clear from the beginning of its existence is that it has been the lifeline for many people in terms of how they're able to build a business. So Jim mentioned people who have been 4 or 5 generations long. So I'll just mention Bushart Farms, which is all the way the end of, what's the curved shed called, Jim? What's the curved shed? The A shed, all the way at the end of the A shed, right by where the empanadas are, is Brent Bushart, who is there with his kids, and sells potatoes, onions, apples, carrots, spinach. I buy most of it every week. It's very good, and his family's been there for 4, 5 generations. And this is the primary market. They also sell into grocery stores, but this is the primary market that they that they sell to. And then you have someone like Philomena. Fast forward to today, and Philomena, I think it's fair to say that you would not have a business if not for the public market.
Absolutely.
And the public market has allowed you to thrive, and it's also in such a beautifully mutually beneficial way. It's also exposed thousands of Rochesterians to incredible Nigerian food they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. But it's really been the lifeline of businesses, whether you're a farmer from 5 generations ago or you're a one-person entrepreneur today.
Absolutely. He's so right.
And
Without
just
the
one
market-
quick thing, but our biggest success story is Wegmans, which started on our market. It's a Rochester fruit and vegetable company, and so that's
No, Philomena's a bigger success than Wegmans.
well, that's true.
Oh, dear Mitch.
That's a good.
Not Philomena's, but Wegmans, okay?
And Matt, you have experience in the food landscape as, a landscape architect. So what have you seen with farmers in our region? You're in Syracuse, we're in Rochester. Are you seeing farmers sustaining their farm operations more and more, or are you seeing struggling farmers and trying to keep operations going? Is there a pattern?
Oh, yeah. I think you mentioned, I did a food plan CNY, which is a comprehensive food system plan for central New York, Syracuse, and the really 5-county area right around Syracuse. And we looked at each sector and looked at the production sector and farming. What's happening around Syracuse, what's happening around Rochester is, the consolidation and concentration of really basically power in the food system, larger and larger farms and competing with these larger entities from around the country and around the world. It's really impacting the farmers. And here the concentration, at least around Syracuse, is dairy. And that's really marginal profits. And so you can see over the course of, just the last few decades, really dramatic shrinking in the number of farmers. Interestingly enough, the amount of farmland has stayed about the same in the last 10, 15 years. But it's just this pressure and competition. But if you look at the history around Syracuse, so I'm sure in Rochester, there was a greater diversity in farm products and farm operations. We had the muck farms in particular, grew lettuce and other vegetables, but really got outcompeted by places like California, where over 90% of our greens that you will buy in that grocery store we mentioned earlier, coming from one area in California. And so that points to some of the issues with the food system. As we lose the local diversity and local production, it makes us more vulnerable to this concentration. If anything happens, in Salinas Valley in California, we're going to be stressed for getting fresh vegetables.
Yeah, just think how long that trip is to get here for our salad. We do have 12 other farmers markets and farmers around Monroe County. I wonder are they infringing on your profits at all? Or do they have competition with the Rochester public market? It's great that we see other farmers markets growing around the towns, but do we feel the pinch from that at all, or?
Well, the farmers markets exploded in the 1990s, and nationally they increased like tenfold. At one time, there was 27 markets just in Monroe County, so they kind of plateaued and have been going down a little bit. There's a great demand in every community to have and the demand, I think the community is, one of it's to have quick access to farm fresh and good produce, but the other piece is to replace the social structure that a lot of towns and villages don't have anymore because they don't have a downtown or an area where people congregate. So, markets become that social function for a lot of the communities too. The problem, we go back and forth on it. It stresses it somewhat, but coming to the Rochester Public Market is a whole different experience than it is to go to one of the other markets. And we have some great markets here in the city. Jackie's back there she's got the market, and Philomena is also there at the Tuesday
West Side
market,
Farmers
at the West Side Farmers Market. Thank you, Philomena. I was going to say the Southwest Farmers Market, but yeah, it's somewhat. It's more the thing that in this every year I have 2 or 3 folks from around the county that'll call. The town of Gates wanted to start a market. Somebody else wanted to start a market. I said, the hardest thing is to get vendors. All have a price point or an amount that they have to make it worth their while and make it interesting to them to go to a market. People call and they think there's this line of farmers just looking for a place where they can go pack up, spend 4 or 5 hours there and come home with $100. Well, that's not it. It has to be worth their while. And they concentrate, and I think that's resulted in some of the leveling off of the markets because there's just not enough producers like we heard before. But we are fortunate, this area, even though there's been a consolidation of some of the farms. There's a lot of folks farming on 2 or 3 acres too that come to our market and come to some of the other markets. And we're really lucky in this whole area of Western New York and Central Michigan to have the effect of the Great Lakes, where we have such a diversity of products, from fruits to vegetables to peaches and all those things that, just one example, the city market in Kansas City, they have a 500-mile radius for where their farmers can come from, and it can only be local. They consider that the local zone because really to get diversity in product out there where it's corn and wheat and huge, and it's tough, and we're lucky that within 40 or 50 miles, we can find everything, but not in the quantities we need to support our whole food system in the long run, but it could be.
Yeah, but let me answer your question very, very specifically, Don. There's no competition, and if anything, we would welcome more competition. Farmers markets are breathing. They're on an oxygen tank right now. They're not growing. They are shrinking drastically. In fact, I first got to know my dear friend Philomena 13 or 14 years ago when we were 2 of the few vendors at the downtown Washington Square Market, which used to exist in Washington Square Park and stopped existing because just an absolute shortage of customers. And then I could list you almost every neighborhood in Rochester has had markets that have started and closed. One of the reasons why the West Side Market is the exception is just because of the sheer strength of someone like Jackie and just an absolute insistence upon it existing. But these markets don't tend to thrive. So, and I'll just share a quick sense of numbers. One of the things I've done at FoodLink is, I'm thinking, I'd love to talk about the history of the market at some point, but when I was doing my research, I decided to start a program that is called the Curbside Market now, which is essentially a version of the old hucksters that used to go to the market, buy food, and go out to different neighborhoods. And it's a wonderfully successful program. We're in year 12. It's done a remarkable amount of good, despite Jackie being mad at me when we started it all those years ago. But she's not mad at me anymore, I promise you. But just to be very honest, FoodLink subsidizes that market about $200,000 every year. That market does not make money there. You use the P word, profits. The city of Rochester earns no profits. The West Side, the 19th Ward Neighborhood Association earns no profits. There's no money in this. Hopefully there's money for people like Phil who are able to have a business that sustains them, but money is unfortunately the reason why we don't have more markets.
Yeah. Philomena, with your business model, how did you start out? Will you give us just a little background of, you started out on a shop on West Main Street, and then the move to the market. How did that differ for you and help your business grow?
That was a very nice question. Actually, I started from 540 West Main. Is a kitchen, like a shared kitchen. Eleanor Coleman was the person running the kitchen back in the days. So I didn't have a lot of money to be able to have my personal kitchen. So Jose, if you would remember Jose, the saxophone player, he was the one that told me about the shared kitchen. So I walked to Eleanor Coleman, and she said yes to renting the kitchen. So I started using the kitchen to work little by little. So after 1 year of renting Eleanor's kitchen, it was Barbara Hoffman's building. This is Barbara right here. Okay, hi, Barbara. Thank you. So after renting Eleanor's kitchen for like a year, there was a next door fish market that had to change hands, so I had to inherit the kitchen. And I went from 540 to 544, and I was there, tried to like have an open restaurant. It didn't really work for me for so many reasons. Most reasons I think is family, because I have children and I don't have any help. So it was very hard for me to juggle the business and the kids. So what I did was use that place as my cook station, then sell at the public market. And I remember back in the days when I was campaigning my books, I came to the public market and they let me set up a booth without pay for like 2 days to be able to raise money, to be able to start having a shed on Saturdays and on Thursdays. So they really encouraged me. It was Jim Farr. I call him Papa Farr because without him, honestly, I'm not going to be at the public market because it wasn't easy having a year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son hold the boy on my back and hold the girl on my arm, and we are there like 5 a.m. in the morning, in the sun, in the winter, in the rain, in everything, with 2 babies. There were so many ladies, were like 4 ladies that started with children. They could not cope even for 6 months. They all quit. But I did not quit because I did not have a choice. I do not have any mother, no father, nobody. So it was my kids, and the market is either you do it or you lose it. And I did not want to quit. I have to keep pushing and keep praying. On cry days, I cry. On smile days, I smile. To be honest, back in the days, sometimes when Bob and Cindy would come with their big, I call it the white big file, to collect their money, I would not have any money to pay them. But I do have a good neighbor, Alex. Remember Alex? Yes. Alex was always there for me. So each time when Cindy or Bob come with a big white book collecting money, and I don't have enough money to pay, I would run to Alex. Please, Alex, would you bail me out, please? And Alex, oh, sure, Philomena, whatever you need, I'm always here for you. And Alex would give me money. It was $80 then. Alex would give me $80 and I'll pay. At the end of the day, I pay him back. There were people donating money to me, giving me tea to keep me warm, but I never stopped. I kept pushing and I kept going, and I kept going and going and going until I met my brother Mitch. I call him Brother Mitch. This journey, so many people came to play to keep me where I am today. And I kept my head up and telling myself I have to be strong. I don't have to quit because I have to do this. So my brother Mitch was always there to encourage me and support me immensely in so many different ways. When he sees anything that needs to be done, he calls me and gives me the job, and I do it to the best of my ability. And I've been coming across so many wonderful people in Rochester that would like to support me. They like to buy something, whatever to keep me going because I'm a hustler. I don't only cook. I even sell the garage sale. I sell fruits and vegetables on non-market, like when the bee shed is not open on Tuesdays, I'm out there in the cold selling fruits and vegetables. On Sunday, I'm there doing garage sale, do whatever I could do to keep me going. So little by little, I kept pushing and kept pushing. There was a time when it was too cold because I'm from West Africa, it's very warm there. I couldn't cope with how January, February, March, and April was so cold. I had to move to the Boulder building, the very building when you enter the gate at the market. It was Boulder Coffee then. So I had my little spot where I got a little corner. I was still at 544 West Main Street, so I cook at 544 and come to Boulder to sell until it was time for the shed project when they had to remodel the shed B, and I was lucky to be one of the vendors that got located in shed B, so I had to leave the Boulder coffee shop and got the stall inside shed B, and I got 2 stalls, 31, 33, and somebody made that happen. Yeah, and it was Papa Jim Farr, my Papa
Thank you,
Farr.
Jim.
Yeah,
I think you've
he
done that
really
probably
helped
a lot.
me to get that bee shed, and so many people would come to me, oh, Philomena, how did you get this place? To be honest, since then, I never said it out, and please do not share this story. Don't tell anybody Jim Farr gave me that place,
You
please.
just told them, Philomena.
Yeah, do not
Philomena.
tell anybody.
You
Keep
definitely
it
just
to
told
yourself.
them.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm so proud of him.
Thank
He is the reason why I got the bee shed, and I'm still there serving the Rochester people because I love to cook. Like I said, in my culture, when you walk up to my house, the very first thing I'm going to offer you would be food and water. And to testify that, my brother Mitch would know because he's lived in the Congo, right? And West African culture is still the same thing. We offer food to people, we offer water, like acceptance and welcoming you. And I love to do that because Rochester community has become the family that I've embraced. My mom is not here, my father is not here. If anything happens to me right now, the very next person here is who I have to save me. And Mama Jackie is right there. I call her my Mama Jackie. She runs the Westside Farmers Market. And back in the days, like 11 years ago, I went there to do food demonstration. And I remember she told me, oh, Philomena, this food is so delicious. Everybody loves this food, and we don't have anything like this. It's different. Would you like to be a vendor at our market? I said, sure, why not? And I became a vendor there. I also worked at the South Wedge, which I have not done for 5 years now because I had a surprise baby and it was so hard for me to run all those markets. I'm very committed to my children. And again, Westside Farmers Market has been so helpful. Everybody is there like family, one big family. The moment I get there, my brother John is right here somewhere. That is my brother John right here. Everybody say thank you to my brother John, please. A big thank you to brother John. Yes. Brother
are all
John
related.
is the reason why I'm still doing the Westside Farmers Market. When
Thank
I
you,
was
Philomena.
pregnant with my son, as soon as my van drives into the market, wherever he was, he comes, he helps me unload, helps me set the tables. He does oh, Philomena, you don't have to touch anything. He doesn't let me lift anything. He does it. The men at the west side, they help me put up my tent, do everything, and that means a lot to me.
Thank you, Philomena.
Unfortunately, sorry, let me say
okay.
this, please. It's very important to me. I stopped doing the South Wedge because they do not help me. When I come, they just sit where they are. I kept struggling. It was a struggle, so I had to quit that market. So I thank people of Rochester for helping me, supporting me in this journey. It has not been easy. It's still not easy, but I'm still pushing. I'm being resilient and keep doing it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Philomena. Your story is an example of a lot of people's stories, and your perseverance is respected and admirable.
Don, can I just say one thing about
Yes.
that though? Phil's story, I think, in a lot of ways, is about how important it is. I mean, it's one of the reasons why markets are struggling. And I don't think, I think I can say with clarity that no one from the South Wedge market meant ill. But a lot of these places just don't simply have the infrastructure or the volunteers or the people to do the work. Even the public market, which is very well staffed compared to most markets, still has, I see Leslie from Friends of the Market back there. If it wasn't for the volunteers of Friends of the Public Market, that place wouldn't be able to operate functionally. If Jackie didn't have a cult of Jackie Farrell to volunteer for her, that place wouldn't have a thriving market. And unfortunately, that's not the case for most of the major food businesses. Our major grocery stores don't rely on volunteers and community building. They rely on having very accessible, ready foods with big parking lots and self-checkout. And there's a functional difference there. And I think we all understand how special it is to have a market that works, but it's not as easy as having a parking lot and saying go to it. It requires a lot of work. And that's why some of the ones like South Wedge, frankly, are really struggling. I don't even know if it exists anymore. It used to be that was one of the most thriving farmers markets. I think it predated West Side Market, right, Jackie? It was, yeah, and it was absolutely thriving. And it's not that it doesn't care or mean well, it's that there's no infrastructure, and these things take a lot of infrastructure.
Matt?
If I can make just one observation here, and those incredible stories. And I think what's happening here in relation to what you described in terms of just the struggling farmers markets and how difficult and that they're just hard to make them go, and we're losing farmers markets. It's a whole different system, because I'm sitting between brother and papa, and out there's another brother. It's a social system. It's food that's not a commodity. And with our retail supermarkets, it's food is commodity, which means they've gotten rid of all the other values of food so they can sell a commodified product. And it's based on extensive research. The research that's done just on the packaging of the product, on the number of eye blinks that people have as they're going through different sections of the market base and the background music, et cetera. It's the investment disparities between public markets and the private retail is, I would say, astronomical. It's down to all the minor details. So then you wonder why it's struggling, but the success and the value is what you just described. It recaptures all the value around food. It's social relationships, it's welcoming people, it's memories, it's place. Nigeria. Yes, so these are two different systems, and how we resolve that, and support that is a question. Right?
Yeah, Jim, speaking of the private, not the farmers at the market, but the private businesses, how many people do you have renting spaces at the farmers market right now that are those private Philomenas, the ones with the little small business, the cheese guy, the pickle guy is really good and popular now. How many of those non-farmers do you have in your support?
Well, I off the top of my head, I can't give you a number, but there's 30, 40 different businesses, because when we assign spots at the market, it's always Western New York farmers food first, and then other foods, and then arts and crafts, and general merchandise, and then prepared foods. And the reason that prepared or ready-to-eat foods are on the bottom of the list is that many of the great markets in this country have become giant food courts over the years, because if you go to the Reading Terminal Market, which is a great market in Philadelphia, and the manager of it's a great friend of mine, but she'll even admit it's not really a market anymore. And in Lexington Market in Baltimore is another great example of a great old market that's really more of a giant food court now. So we always are careful about that. But, it's a great spot. There's so many stories. Juan and Maria's Empanadas is another story of a Chilean family who came over and started, and that was before there was all kinds of empanadas all over the city. Now there's a lot of different variety, and at the International Plaza we have about 5 different varieties, and one even from Romania. So the variety of empanadas and stuff, when they started, there was nobody doing empanadas in this area, and so they started that, and the other number of businesses, there's a number of them, but it's a great way for folks to get an entry into the marketplace, to test products. We work with the commissary that's really, in the old Sibley's building, that works with food entrepreneurs, and they actually rent a space at the market every year, and they pay the market fee, and they pay the insurance on it. But then they rotate clients through there, and whether they have packaged products or they have ready-to-eat food, they have a way they can test market it and see if it's going to be successful. And I think that's another strength of markets, that it's a test bed for a lot of products. Yeah, I mean, we we more and more rely on those sort of food entrepreneurs, and we, the Eastern Market in Detroit, and Mitch and I were there not too long ago. They have a more land and more infrastructure, but their whole system is built so that folks can move through the food production process and move from a stall into the market into a more permanent indoor stall, and then they're actually securing land around the market to keep it at a reasonable rate so they can have small food manufacturing businesses in the area. So it's, all those ties, and we try to be that same sort of a pipeline from our market, and then as they get larger and larger, if they're going into production, we do have a relationship with the Genesee Valley Regional Market, and they have warehouse space, so sometimes we've had folks that, start with us and then go over there and have operations. So
Let me take a second, Don, just to backtrack on what Jim said about the Reading Terminal Market and the idea of a food court. I think one thing that makes the Rochester Public Market particularly special is that you can go there and buy a $10 loaf of artisanal bread. God knows I've done it before. Or you can go there and buy a 50-cent quart of Driscoll strawberries that have about 10 minutes of shelf life left. And God knows I've done that too. And it's a particularly special thing to be able to buy both of those things at the market, whereas a place like Reading Terminal Market or a lot of the food courts are a place that really are for folks exclusively who have the income to buy very expensive prepared foods. It's just not the case at the Rochester Market, and that really is what separates it from probably every other market, save a few. Jim and I have been recently on a bit of a road show. I'm going to start calling you Papa Far too, actually. Papa Far and I have been on a bit of a road show in the last couple of months. We've gone to Detroit, we've gone to Cleveland, and we're probably going to go to either Baltimore or Cincinnati next to check out some markets, because we do have some important work in front of us here in terms of thinking about succession planning. Just as I mentioned that the West Side Market exists because of Jackie's strength, I cannot stress enough that the Rochester Public Market exists entirely because of Jim Farr's strength. That place, yeah, give him a round of applause. And I really, Don, I'm hoping at some point you actually tee me up to talk about history, so I don't have to keep trying to create tangential threads to talk about history. But back in the 1950s, when the state of New York built the Genesee Valley Regional Market Authority, which for those of you who don't know is where Palmer's is now, and it's where all sorts of other stuff is on, what is it? It's Jefferson and West Henrietta?
East Henrietta.
And East Henrietta. When the state built that, when the state, and it's a market authority, it's an authority of the state of New York. When the state built that, they built it with the intention of ending the Rochester Public Market. And think about it, the Rochester Public Market was built on the railroad, and the Genesee Valley Regional Market Authority was built because of the highway. It was built right after the interstate highway system was built, and it was built right off the highway. So we're talking about the difference between freight on rail cars and freight on trucks. And the public market it was set to expire. It was set to go away, and no one thought much of it. But people, and even though I think Jim is a little long in the tooth, he's not that long in the tooth. He wasn't there back then. People not in this room just kept going to the market. It was just such a place, such a magnetic place. And the city of Rochester had I don't even know the vision, but just the momentum to say, look, if people are coming, we'll keep running it. And it just kept going and going and going. But it was hanging on by a thread. And then when Jim took it over, and Jim, who has the appetite for markets that very few people have, and he is known worldwide for being just a man who loves markets and is a student of markets, he is the reason why this market still exists in the way that it does and is able to feature. Well, actually, let me ask a question. Someone from the audience, not you, Leslie. Someone else in the audience guess, how many people come to the market on a beautiful Saturday morning? How many people? Take a guess. God, I was hoping you guys were going to guess way lower than that. 40,000, right? 40 is a good number, Jim?
Yeah, 40 is good.
40 is about an accurate. 200 would be great. Just keep in mind, our city has 211,000 people in total. Wow. Just want to be clear about that. But we get 40,000 people. There's no busier place than the market on a Saturday. And it is really due to the strength of Jim, the city's insistence, and I will say that as a city council member, we do not cut the budget of the public market. We invest in it. We make sure it has what it needs on a fairly regular basis. And because of that, not only are we a place where 40,000 people come on a Saturday, but on top of that, we're a place that can help someone like Philomena build a business for her family. It's truly a remarkable thing, and it is something that very few other markets can tout. I don't know if what I just said demonstrates just how special this place is, but it's unique across the country in the way that it does that work.
And really, and just to reinforce quickly what Mitch said, and Syracuse actually as market is similar in many other ways, and they stayed kind of going together. But the markets that are really markets where folks depend on them year round and come every week for a significant amount of their shopping are really very few. You know, the most famous, some of the markets you hear about, Pike Place. Pike Place it's a great market. I'm not putting it down, but it's mostly a tourist market. The ferry terminal market in San Francisco is the same way. There's so many examples across the country where they're really not focused on. Their main focus is really not providing local folks access to food. And a big piece of that, as Mitch alluded to in the beginning, is that we have the mixture of wholesale dealers that are still on the market that use that. It's two different ways. They buy from the farmers in the summer season, but they also support the farmers that are there year-round and sell them product in the other season. And many of them sell at the market product on Saturday that they know by Tuesday or Wednesday of next week when they start delivering to restaurants, it's not going to be the quality that they need for the restaurant deliveries, but it's still quality now. So, and it's unique, like Mitch said, that you can have a farmer selling a little tomatoes for five in a basket for $5, right next to somebody selling a whole flat of tomatoes for $2. But folks, they each find their own audience, and there's not, it doesn't really suppress the price on the folks that are really looking for locally grown fresh produce, but it provides that options, and especially for the immigrant population and the new Americans. So many of them come and buy communally and buy in huge quantities. You wouldn't believe some of the wholesale dealers, the amount of product that they move on a Saturday, where folks come in and they'll almost buy a whole pallet of, greenhouse grown tomatoes. And they communally take them and make sauce and do other things with them. But it's just a great support for the nutrition in the community.
No, that is wonderful. They've become hucksters, right? They buy and bring it back to
Yeah.
the community and share.
Well, but they communally buy and just real quickly, I'll give a shout out to the Friends because Leslie's up back there. No, we always do this anyhow, but they help us by running our SNAP redemption token system, which we should all fight all the efforts to cut SNAP because it would be a horrible effect on not only us but millions of families. But thanks to their help in New York State Fresh Checks, the Friends last year did 2.88 million in SNAP sales at the market, and that's 7,000 distinct customers. So that's 7,000 families that are getting some of that value. But that's also 2.88 million that stays in our community, whether it goes to farmers or other small business people in the market. That's a huge amount of money to recycle in the community every year. So you hear folks, well, there's SNAP fraud, there's this and that, but folks that aren't on the ground don't know the impact really that the SNAP benefits have in so many communities. So fight it if you can.
That's an enormous number. 2.8 million. Thank you. Yeah, that's brings me to the question about transportation to and from the market. We've talked about that. I talked a little bit with Philomena when we chatted about with our aging population, food is heavy. How do we plan in the future to get the food to people's homes? Is there a plan in place, or can there be a plan for the future that supports people shopping at the market and using Grubhub maybe, or Instacart or something like that through market?
Well, we actually have a new management system software that we've had for a couple of years that another of our audience, Evan Lowenstein back there, is going to help very soon. It has the capability for each one of the vendors to have their own website where they can have their own sales platform through the software. And what in a lot of markets, people call in orders and pre-order and then come and pick them up. There was several of the vendors, and some still do during COVID, when some folks didn't want to come to the market, although we were there all the time, started to do the food boxes. Bottom line wholesale that is at the market still does 150 or 200 a week that are people. They can either select a box that has a selection of items in it for $20 or $30 or $40, or they can pre-select what they want, and then they'll actually deliver it to community centers and other places that they use for pickup. So there's some models. There, a lot of Detroit, again, is doing a lot more of that, but they actually have a lot better infrastructure than we do to handle that sort of thing. So, and I'm sure Mitch can.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll ever have Grubhub or Insta, and I don't know that I really want to. I mean, as Matt was describing, one of the things that makes the market special is the community that's built there, and I actually think that, you know, the transactional nature of the grocery store is one thing. I actually love going grocery shopping. I really do. I love shopping at the market. I hate shopping for pretty much anything else, but I love shopping for food. But I don't understand the people, and I'm sorry if some of you are Instacart users. I just don't understand the idea of clicking and it showing up at your front door. And I don't think that it'll ever really have a place at the market. What I do think, not just because it's not welcome, because it is welcome, as Jim talked about. Jim and Evan are trying to find ways to use technology to innovate, but I just don't think we'll ever have the infrastructure to really embrace the Instacarts or Grubhubs, and I'm not sad about that. What I think we ought to do and need to do is to make sure that public transportation is more readily available at the market. I just insisted upon a meeting at 7:30 a.m. on a Saturday morning at the market with Jim and the CEO of Rochester Regional Transit Authority, RGRTA, to try to figure out how we can have better transportation opportunities in the market. One of the real challenges that we have is just the built infrastructure. You know, the market is incredible in the sense that it is in the same place that it's been since 1905. And one of the things that makes it special as well is that it's nestled within a neighborhood, which is super cool. And a lot of other, you know, in the Detroit market, we were just at, the market is the neighborhood, but the Rochester public market is of a neighborhood, not the neighborhood. And I think that's special, but it also makes transportation very hard. Right now, if you try to get a bus into the public market when those 40,000 people are entering on a Saturday morning, it's damn near impossible. But there are some things that we can do, and if Jim gives me the keys to the kingdom, we might be able to get it done. Sorry, if Papa Farr gives me the keys to the kingdom, we might be able to get it done. And that includes, you know, there's a couple of small lots we have in the market, and we can't get a bus in there, but RTS, I'll just call it, RTS has a whole lot more small shuttles that are going around town. They have the on-demand version of the shuttle, and there are ways that we can create, and the city owns plenty of kind of scattered lots around the market. And there are ways that we could build a small transportation hub that is better at getting people to and from the market. That, I think, is the future and something we have to work on. I will tell you, without telling any tales out of school, that RTS is very interested. RTS is incredibly strapped right now in terms of just how much is on their plate regularly, but the one day of the week where that's not really the case is Saturdays. So there's a great opportunity to get them to lean in on Saturdays. I know that Jim is eager to make it work, and so now it's going to be about putting us all together and making a plan happen in the next year or so.
That's really good. That's exciting. That's needed. It speaks to the zoning and land use around the market. I know recently there was conversation about maybe building a new housing unit in the market on that one parking lot, put commercial on the first floor. And is that still in the works, or?
We do, you know, we completed a master plan in 2022. That was an update of one we did in 2012, but we didn't look just at the market itself proper, but we looked at the out parcels and the other opportunities in the neighborhood. And one of those was having on some of the land on the west side of Trinidad Street where we have, or Union Street on Trinidad where we have the parking now, is to really do like Mitch was talking about, but a more substantial like transportation hub over there that would also have, retail maybe on the first floor and then residential on the second floor. We also, if we, in the 50s when the market was trying to raise money, they sold the property that's behind the Bee Shed to a company called Stanmore Liquor that was there many years. Now it's Big Apple Deli, but they've grown and they're huge and they're out in the Kodak Elm Grove property too. So eventually that warehouse building is going to be up for sale, and we'd like to work with a private developer and us together to do something there, to put some more retail space on the first floor and then residential above. And even though it backs up to the railroad tracks, that's Station 55's done great down the street. And if Larry Glazer were still alive, we'd have housing in the Amatec building that's at 255 North Union, because Larry and I we're working on a project there that I think if he was still alive would be done.
We enjoy the density around there, right, of people. We love seeing the activity of people because it is a place, and people make the place. And so more housing around the market definitely will continue making the place. So we're excited. The city's comprehensive plan, the 2034 vision plan, really does outline some zoning code changes and work towards the future land use around the market. I saw the Scioto Street parking lot is not as well known as everybody should know. There's extra parking off Scioto Street if you don't know. You don't have to wait as long probably, and it's a quick little walk without crossing major roads. So I like the zoning code and the city's comprehensive plan addressing some of those needs. But we also need to address urban agriculture. And are we seeing more local farmers starting up businesses within the region? I like the Sofrito Garden. As you drive to the public market, you see that Sofrito Garden where residents in that neighborhood have a community garden and produce sofrito at the end of the season. So how do we support more of that within the land around the market or within the city? We have a lot of vacant parcels. And Mitch can speak, and Matt probably as well, but we have the urban community farming.
I'll answer. I'll talk about both things in one. We are the comprehensive plan that came out in 2018 or 2019 was meant to be the precursor of zoning code changes, and we are now very close to having a draft to City Council to hopefully vote on this year. Frankly, it would have happened earlier, but this is part of the reality of administration change. I'm sure had the 2021 election gone differently at the mayor level, it would have happened. But when Mayor Evans came in, I think he rightfully said, "I want to put my stamp on it." So now it's getting ready for final approval, hopefully this year. And that zoning code is meant to do a couple of things. One is increased density across the city. We can't have successful businesses if we don't have people living with any amount of density. And two this is not being priority, but two being fairly important, that we have to make it easier for people to use land in different ways, including urban agriculture. I mean, if I was here for a different purpose, I'd be talking about all the other things that I would argue are priorities over urban agriculture. We have to have a zoning code that allows for all sorts of types of housing that we don't have almost any of right now in Rochester. Things like townhouses and ranches and condos and co-living spaces. All that will be done by the zoning code. But as well, urban agriculture, because we do have some parcels of land that are never going to be places where we're going to be able to do any significant housing, and why not be able to produce some food? But I do caution people to think that there are easy ways to be able to create successful, viable businesses using urban agriculture as the foundation. Very, very, very challenging, and probably shouldn't be the goal, is my honest opinion. It should be about beautification of neighborhoods, empowering neighbors, growing some food that is able to build community, all things I'm sure Matt has more to say than I do, but it's not going to be something that's going to be able to create viable businesses. And honestly, I don't know that anyone would imagine that it would. How could a small parcel of land in any part of the city be able to compete in terms of its ability to produce good products with, say, Laguna Farms in Williamson or in Wayne County? It's not going to compete with them. So it shouldn't be about trying to create a successful business, but rather about how to use empty lots for really intentional purposes.
Yeah, I would agree. Oh, with some of the same issues in Syracuse. They've gone through a whole rezone program, and one of the key things has been trying to get rid of the barriers to urban agriculture. And they couldn't call them urban farms because farms evoked all sorts of things that people actually thought would be negative in the city, so they call them urban gardens, food gardens. And also making it easier to get water access and auxiliary buildings and fences, so many things that were barriers for urban ag. But what's interesting, the urban ag sites that we have that are really successful in Syracuse, right, struggling to be a viable business, but they have, like mentioned before, all these other values around it and creating social networks, public health values, the public health values of being connected with other people who can help you get other resources for your family, for your health. These urban ag sites are also market sites to change the zoning so that they can sell food from right there. That's been a biggie. We have a great farm, Urban Delights, down on the south side of Syracuse, and it's with a teen entrepreneurial program producing value-added products, and they're selling right there at the farm. So all that they've had to really advocate for. And so I think urban agriculture, these farms can also have connections with farms outside in the rural landscape as well. So it becomes part of a whole system.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's a whole system that we rely on every day, right? Every meal. And it's so needed that we have that sharing of our cultures with those urban farms. The Lexington Urban Farm is done here in Rochester on the old subway bed. So it's a good use of an old space that's not being reused for anything. And they've grown, Mitch, you can speak to this, but they've grown twice the size now of their land there?
Yeah. So real quick. My day job is at FoodLink, the regional food bank. We operate the largest urban farm in Rochester. Right now it's about 1.5 acres on the old subway, but the actual terminus of the subway bed on Lexington and Curlew. And for a long time, it was just completely vacant land. And we started working on it about 13, 14 years ago, specifically to offer an opportunity for new Americans to have a space to grow. This is the part of the city, the Northwest Quadrant, where the vast majority of South Asian refugees were resettled by the Catholic Church, many of whom had an agricultural background, very few of whom had any space to grow any food in whatever apartment they were resettled into. So we created a space for them to be able to grow the things that they wanted. It's grown exceptionally well. Not from a business perspective, but it's grown from just in terms of the way that it empowers communities and brings people together. So we actually just are about to complete a $2 million renovation of the space to do a couple of things. Most importantly, to expand the number of beds we have and to make it so that it's not just the new Americans who are there, but any member of the community who wants a garden bed can have one. Number two, to extend the growing season. So we built a 30 by 60 greenhouse that's going to be able to grow food for FoodLink purposes on a year-round basis. And three, perhaps most importantly, we're going to have what we're calling an edible education center. It's a beautiful building that is going to be able to host field trips. My goal is to have every RCSD student come to this site to be able to see how food is grown. Every study shows that if you participate in the growing of food and the cooking of food, you're more likely to try new foods. So in our city school district, we have so many kids who never get a chance to see a farm or see how food grows, and we want to do it right in the city of Rochester, right across from several schools that exist in the district. Again, it's right on Lexington Avenue. The business side of it, again, becomes incredibly difficult, although the goal would be if I could figure out what Philomena needs the most of in terms of fresh produce, and I'm guessing it's sweet potatoes,
Sweet potatoes.
then maybe our greenhouse can grow some sweet potatoes that would be able to keep her costs down and keep our lights on. Things like that have some legs. But again, we don't expect for this farm to be able to all of a sudden compete with big commercial farms on Lake Ontario, nor would I really want to compete with them. It's about trying to find the space where it's helping to educate families and kids, but also trying to help some small, independent entrepreneurs like Philomena be able to get ahead. So I would welcome anyone who wants to visit the farm to reach out to me directly, and I'll make sure to host you for a tour later this summer.
And we also have to mention that that's also on the 200th anniversary of the Erie Canal. That's actually the old Erie Canal bed before it was the subway bed.
We do hold all the history, don't we? 200 years of canals. Well, thank you all for sharing your insights tonight on the public market and how our food systems really affect our health and the shape of our communities. And they continue to grow with our communities as they grow. So we have a bright future ahead with your retirement soon. We really hope you stay a lot longer and continue to spread what you've done at the market with your future successor. We're excited. Thank you for your
Thank
service
you.
to our city.
First of all, Jim's not going anywhere anytime soon. I just want to be very clear about that.
You can't.
Jim is not going anywhere anytime soon. Let me. I know we're out of time, but there's a couple things from a historical perspective I wanted to share with people, because I don't ever get a chance to talk about this stuff, and I have a feeling people are partially here because they are interested in the history of the market. So let me just say a couple things I think are important, then I'll shut up. The market initially, the original public market of Rochester. Well, there were a couple buildings here and there in the 1850s. It was a very organic market that existed right at the Liberty Pole. Not organic like organic processes, although it probably all was organic processes. It was where farmers and consumers met, was right where the Liberty Pole is now. And eventually the city of Rochester said, we no longer want to have people we don't want to have a market in the middle of downtown. There was a lot of the same stuff Jim has to deal with at the end of every Saturday afternoon. It's just a lot of schmutz. We'll call it schmutz. It'll be very simple that way, right? So the city said, we want to find a way to actually build a public market and move it elsewhere. Just a couple things I think are of note to people. One, there was a big argument at the time over where the market should be located. And the argument was not just about where it should be physically, but also at what kind of market it should be. If it was going to be a wholesale market, it should be way on the outskirts of town. If it was going to be a retail market, it should be right in the center of town. And if you read, my dissertation, for example, which is available online for free for you to read, and you would be only the third and fourth people to read it, you're welcome to. You will find out that there was a huge debate and lots of sites were examined. This was big public news back in 1904. Eventually, the decision to start the market where it is now, which was called the Molson site, was owned by a nurseryman named George Molson. It was started there with the intention of it being a wholesale market, and that's what it was for a very long time. That was the outskirts. It feels like now it's very close to everything, but that was the country. That was a very undeveloped part of Rochester. So they started the market there as a wholesale market, and eventually the retail kind of snuck in, especially as people's transportation changed. But the one point I want to leave people with is when they established the market in 1904, 1900 by an act of legislation, there was a commitment by the city of Rochester then to start the east side market and the west side market, because the council members on the west side, where my friend Eric Van Duzen lives in the 19th Ward in particular, they were furious. They were so upset. There is no further part of the city to the public market than the 19th Ward, at least back then there wasn't. And so they were furious. Why should we invest in all this huge infrastructure in a place that my people in the 19th Ward will never get a chance to participate in or embrace? And of course, that's not true because Eric's there every Saturday morning now. But that's not what it was back in 1904, 1905. So the city, by statute, committed to building a west side public market and never did it. And it is my goal as someone who wants to continue to be part of city government for a long time. It is my goal for us to eventually have city infrastructure built on the west side of the river to be able to do part of what we do in the public market on the west side. We just did it. We just did something incredible. We started in COVID and it's growing. The International Plaza on North Clinton, which Jim helps to run, is incredible. We still have nothing on the west side. And it's very, very important to me, and I hope it's important to all of you, that we build some infrastructure and help people like Jackie in the west side market build out more than just the parking lot of a church, but a place that people can go regularly and be able to buy good quality, healthy food. So that's my very quick historical spiel. My dissertation, I get all the royalties if you read it, so feel free to, okay?
And I gotta make one more comment, because sitting right in the audience tonight is Nancy Rosin, and Nancy actually wrote a book called The Hands That Feed Us for our anniversary, our 100th anniversary in 2005, and it's available at the Friends stand every week at the market, and it's a great history of the market. So.
If I could add one piece of Rochester history that
Also.
I came across in prepping for this, what you described is really similar to Syracuse. We had a market right in the center of the city. It was moved, and partly because of recommendations and movement led by somebody here in Rochester, it became one of the early urban planners in the country, Charles Mulford Robertson, who quoted that, "I am not enthusiastic about public markets." So, and he led the City Beautiful movement, which is about aestheticizing cities. And he thought markets were too messy. And so it was the reasons for moving them out of the center of city. So we've got a, interesting connection with Rochester and
So Walford Robinson consulted with the city of Syracuse?
I don't know if he consulted, but what replaced the market is a soldiers and sailors monument in the whole City Beautiful movement, architectural kind of aestheticized. That replaced the market. So it was part of the City Beautiful movement.
And Charles Mulford Robinson, very well loved in the world of architecture and civic planning, was also the editor of a newspaper in Rochester called the Rochester Post-Express. Back when we had newspapers, multiple of them. So think about that for a second.
They're probably digitized, right?
They are.
Yeah, nice. Thank you guys very much.
Thank
Did we
you.
have any questions from the audience? I know we have a couple minutes. There are a couple. Mary, I'm going to give you the microphone.
Thank you. Mitch, you had mentioned the Washington Square Market having withered away a decade or more ago. And since that time, there's been a tremendous increase in the downtown residential population. Do you think that the population has now reached a critical mass where a revival might succeed?
Maybe. I would hope so. I think one of the things I've learned very well after working at Foodthink for 16 years is that although we can all acknowledge that being able to go buy a freshly grown cucumber near your house is nice, you still only do it at times that are convenient for you, right? So our Washington Square Market was, if I recall, Phil, I think it was Wednesdays at noon.
Noontime, yeah.
It was a lunchtime market, and no one, and we used to get all these Excelis employees to come out. They co-sponsored it. It was great. Everyone was there to buy Phil's lunch or hamburger or someone's. No one wants to buy a cucumber in the middle of the day to take it back up to your office to let it sit on your desk for 4 hours to drive it home. So, I think the only way a market would work downtown is I would ask Tom and Mary, when would a market work downtown? Probably on the weekend, but then you're competing with the public market. So I don't know. I mean, we also have to acknowledge that maybe maybe we don't need a market in every place. In fact, one thing that I constantly tell people in Rochester is instead of always trying to create the new and different stuff. This is why I don't really want to do the DoorDash and Instacart off of the market. Let's just get people to the market. Yeah. We have 40,000 people there on a good Saturday. We could probably fit a whole lot more, especially if we build some density, if we build some public transportation. I don't know that we need new markets as much as we need to keep investing in the market that we have.
And
Of course, if the market were open 5 to 7 p.m., that would address one of your concerns.
Look, I hope someone starts a market downtown at some point, and I hope it works if that's what people want. But I think it becomes incredibly challenging. Also, who runs the 5 to 7 market? When Foodthink, at some point, I said, I'm no longer asking my staff at Foodthink to run the Washington Square Market. It just was not, we were not achieving our mission by doing it. And so I begged Excelis to do it at that time. And they were like, well, what staff member is going to be there on 5 to 7 on a Friday night or a Thursday night? So what I say to that is, Godspeed. I hope it works. I'm going to keep putting my effort into making the public market the best market it can be.
And there is, last year, RDDC, Downtown Development Corporation, did work with the commissary and tried to do an evening market. I stopped a couple times and they had limited farm vendors there and more arts, crafts, and general merchandise, but you know, somebody is working on it. Yes.
Hi, thanks. Philomena, this is directed to you. I just want to build on what was said. I'm from Syracuse. I'm a plant because I'm Matt Potter's wife. But we have a system in the city that supports urban ag in small urban community gardens. And that's where New Americans grow food. That's what led to farms at the urban edge, where New Americans, including deaf New Americans, have their now completely autonomous deaf New American farm. They're producing a huge amount of food, distributing it informally in the community, but also selling big quantities at the market, and are looking to start sourcing restaurants. So I'm wondering, do you source your produce from local farmers? Do you source from New American farmers? If not, like, what are the barriers? And I would just keep in mind that for New Americans becoming farmers, there are enormous barriers in terms of like the administrative literacy that's required. And then when you add language literacy, you're adding people who use Nepali Sign Language as opposed to even American Sign Language. Like, people need to help New American farmers apply for loans. But please talk about your sourcing.
Okay, here we live in Rochester, you know, everything is like seasonal. Like during our farming season in the summertime, I do partner with some farmers here and I get my supplies from them. But during wintertime, nothing really grows out here, so we have to buy from other vendors. Like different places, we really have to get from different places depending on the season.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One more here. Thank you.
Okay. Hello. So obviously everyone here, everyone in this room, you guys, like, we all are here because we care. Obviously with our generation, you know, it might be a little bit different. I'm just kind of wondering, like, how whoever has an opinion on this, like, how we can kind of mobilize people in the Rochester community at U of R as well. Like, obviously there's people from all over the country, all over the world at U of R. I often find on a general point, people will ask, like, I really love Rochester, and people will ask me, they're like, well, why do you love it? There's nothing to do here. And I always say there's a lot to do here, more so than other cities that I've seen. And there's a lot of culture here, and a lot of the community aspect is just so beautiful to me. So I guess my question is kind of, how do you guys think we can, with the younger generation, how we can kind of mobilize people to want to go to farmers markets and want to be more involved in the community, and kind of how, I guess if you're just talking to us three, like, how you think that we can kind of like work with our peers and you know, transfer the knowledge that we've got here and to other people?
I would like to answer that question very much.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So I think that the city of the Rochester region does a poor job at attracting our college graduates to want to be here and stay here. And I think in particular, when you compare it to a place like Pittsburgh, we do a really poor job. There's no reason on earth that we can't convince people that this is a place to go to make a life for themselves, but it really does start first and foremost with the institution that you're at. I mean, I'm not gonna cast stones at the U of R at this particular juncture. I am on their home turf after all. I'll do it somewhere else if people want me to. But you know, the University of Rochester, when I think about one of the challenges with public transportation that we have as a city, the U of R has a privatized shuttle for U of R students, right? In most cities, when the university says we want to spend a bunch of money to help our kids get from point A to point B, they would invest in the regional public transit authority. The U of R and RIT both have completely private shuttles that is only for their students in their community with their cards on it. That's a functional problem that I sit at tables and complain and kvetch about it all the time, and it's going to go nowhere. You're the customer. So what changes is by having the U of R students say, look, it's nice that you are sending a shuttle down to the, because they send a shuttle down to the market once a day on Saturdays, right? 3 times. Three times? That's nice, and I'm glad they do it, and they should keep doing it. And if anything, they should do more. But if we want to start figuring out how to get more public transit for the whole community into the market, it's going to cost money. And there's only so much money that institutions not named the U of R have in this community. So I think that's a really impactful way for students to be able to say, look, I want to be a more, I want the U of R to be a more active more active citizen, a corporate citizen. The way they can do it is by engaging with our public transit system and helping to get people there more often. And by the way, including your peers who live off campus, who the shuttle isn't going to get to the market. But if we had better public transit for everyone to get to the market, that would benefit your peers as well.
Thank you, guys. I think we're getting kicked out soon, but I do want to thank everybody for coming tonight and thank our panelists for their great insight on the market. Great conversation.